In a dramatic shift in U.S. trade policy, President Donald Trump announced a 90-day pause on tariff increases for over 75 countries, a move aimed at easing tensions and fostering negotiations. However, this reprieve notably excludes China, which is set to face a staggering 125% tariff on its exports to the U.S. This unexpected announcement sent stock markets soaring, reflecting a blend of relief and uncertainty among investors as they grapple with the implications of Trump's tariff strategy. During a press conference, Trump explained that the decision to pause the tariff hikes was influenced by the chaotic reactions in the markets, particularly in the bond sector. "I thought that people were jumping a little bit out of line, they were getting a little bit yippy," he remarked, suggesting that the pause was a necessary response to market volatility. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent supported this narrative, asserting that the tariffs had succeeded in bringing more than 75 countries to the negotiating table, indicating a strategic move towards tailored trade agreements. While the pause applies to most trading partners, it does nothing to alleviate the escalating conflict with China. Trump's administration has ramped up tariffs on Chinese goods, a retaliation against Beijing's own punitive measures against U.S. exports. Following the announcement of U.S. tariffs, China escalated its retaliatory tariffs from 34% to 84%, signaling a deepening trade war that many analysts warn could push the U.S. economy towards recession. The ramifications of these tariffs extend beyond immediate financial markets. Analysts, including J.P. Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon, have voiced concerns about a potential economic downturn, warning that the unpredictable nature of Trump's tariff policies could lead to significant job losses and economic instability. "I think probably that's a likely outcome," Dimon stated, reflecting the widespread anxieties that have taken hold since the tariffs were first announced. On the international front, the European Union has also reacted by imposing its own retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods, further complicating the global trade landscape. As negotiations unfold, the EU has signaled a unified front, demonstrating resilience in response to what they perceive as unilateral U.S. actions. Finnish MEP Ora Sala emphasized the EU's resolve, stating, "We need to be united. Trade is something where the EU has competencies." Amid this backdrop, some businesses are reconsidering their supply chains. The heavy tariffs on various Asian countries have paradoxically made China a more attractive option for companies wary of the disruptions caused by the U.S. tariffs. Executives from companies like Mozo Pillow are finding that long-standing relationships with Chinese suppliers provide a level of stability amidst the uncertainty. Travis Luther of Mozo Pillow noted, "Staying in China and making China work is everyone's strategy right now," highlighting the challenges of shifting supply chains in a volatile policy environment. As businesses and governments navigate this new landscape, the future of U.S.-China relations remains precarious. With trade discussions on the horizon and Trump's insistence on maintaining a hardline stance against China, the coming weeks will be critical in determining the trajectory of global trade. The question remains, will these negotiations lead to a de-escalation of tensions? Or will they further entrench the divisions created by these tariffs? The world watches closely as the consequences of Trump's tariff policies unfold, with the potential for significant shifts in global economic alliances and practices. In a dramatic escalation of trade tensions, President Donald Trump has implemented sweeping tariffs on a wide range of imports, with a significant focus on Chinese goods. This bold move, which sees tariffs on Chinese products soar to a staggering 125%, has ignited fierce debates across political and economic spectrums, raising concerns about potential repercussions for the U.S. economy and international relations. On April 2, Trump announced a global tariff of 10% on hundreds of countries, but it was the subsequent rise in tariffs against China, now totaling 125%, that has captured headlines. This latest round of tariffs took effect on April 9, marking a pivotal moment in the ongoing trade war. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent defended the measures, arguing that they serve as leverage in negotiations, asserting that President Trump created maximum negotiating leverage for himself. He indicated that many nations had reached out to engage in talks to reduce tariffs, showcasing a willingness to negotiate that contrasts sharply with the president's earlier rhetoric. While the administration touted the tariffs as necessary to rectify perceived trade imbalances, critics have emerged from both sides of the aisle. Representative Don Bayer, Democrat, Virginia, described the tariffs as "stupid and bad," while some Republicans expressed concern over the implications for American consumers and businesses. The Retail Industry Leaders Association warned that these tariffs could disrupt markets and inflate prices for essential goods, potentially hurting American families already grappling with economic uncertainty. In the wake of these developments, markets have shown volatility. Following the announcement of the tariffs, stock prices plummeted, prompting a surge of anxiety among investors. However, after Trump indicated a pause on tariffs for over 75 countries, excluding China, there was a brief rally in the markets. Nevertheless, this pause has not quelled fears of a recession, with J.P. Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon stating that a downturn is a likely outcome given the current economic landscape. China has responded to the U.S. tariffs with its own retaliatory measures, increasing tariffs on American goods from 34% to 84%. The Chinese government characterized the U.S. actions as unilateralism and economic bullying, underscoring the escalating tensions between the two nations. China's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian emphasized that Beijing would not accept what it views as hegemonic behavior from Washington. Amid these tensions, Trump remains defiant, asserting that he is in control of the situation. "I know what the hell I'm doing," he claimed, while also insinuating that countries are eager to negotiate with the U.S. to avoid the full brunt of the tariffs. The president's administration has expressed openness to discussions with multiple countries, including Japan and South Korea, as a means to ease trade tensions. As the situation unfolds, the long-term impacts of these tariffs remain uncertain. Economists caution that the ongoing trade war could have significant ramifications for the U.S. economy, potentially leading to inflation and a decline in consumer confidence. The political landscape is equally fraught, with bipartisan concerns mounting over the president's unilateral approach to trade policy. Looking ahead, the potential for negotiations and the response from both domestic and international markets will be crucial in shaping the trajectory of U.S.-China relations and the broader global economy. With many countries already expressing their intent to retaliate against U.S. tariffs, the coming weeks will likely be decisive in determining whether a resolution can be reached or if the trade war will escalate further, entrenching the U.S. position as a contentious player in global trade. In a dramatic escalation of trade tensions, President Donald Trump's administration has implemented unprecedented tariffs on Chinese goods, igniting fears of a full-scale trade war between the world's two largest economies. As the tariff conflict intensifies, both nations find themselves locked in a precarious game of chicken with little indication of an off-ramp in sight. On April 9, 2025, China responded to new American tariffs with a staggering 50% levy on U.S. imports, bringing the total tariff rate on American goods to an eye-watering 84%. This retaliatory measure came just hours after Trump announced a reciprocal increase in tariffs on Chinese exports, which now stand at an astonishing 125%. The ramifications of this tit-for-tat exchange are expected to reverberate across global markets, raising alarm among economists and policymakers alike. The stakes are particularly high for China, whose economy has already been grappling with the fallout from a significant property crisis. Economic analysts warn that the implementation of such steep tariffs could lead to a contraction of China's GDP by as much as 2.4 percentage points, according to estimates from Goldman Sachs. "This is a huge shock to the China-US economic relationship, like an earthquake," remarked Wu Xinbo, dean of the Institute of International Studies at Fudan University. The effects of deteriorating trade ties could not only hamper China's economic recovery but also exacerbate a global slowdown. Much of the current friction can be traced back to long-standing grievances on both sides. The U.S. government has accused China of unfair trade practices and intellectual property theft, while China views the American tariffs as an affront to its sovereignty and a direct challenge to the legitimacy of the ruling Communist Party. For China, this is about their sovereignty. This is about the Communist Party's hold on power, noted Scott Kennedy, a senior advisor at the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington. In contrast, Trump appears to be leveraging the tariffs primarily as a political tool to bolster his domestic standing ahead of the upcoming election. The implications of this trade war extend beyond the borders of the U.S. and China. With the two nations accounting for approximately 43% of the global economy, a protracted conflict could lead to slower global growth and diminished investment. As the U.S. economy grapples with rising prices for consumer goods, particularly electronics such as smartphones, which constitute a significant portion of imports from China, American consumers will feel the pinch. The recent surge in tariffs is expected to exacerbate inflation, further squeezing household budgets. China, on the other hand, has attempted to downplay its vulnerabilities, claiming a reduced reliance on U.S. markets. However, the reality is that many of its export-oriented industries are poised to suffer significantly, particularly those along the eastern seaboard that largely depend on American consumers. These companies will be hit very hard, warned Wang Yuesheng, director of the Institute of International Economics at Peking University. As the situation unfolds, both nations seem entrenched in their positions, with neither willing to concede ground. Chinese state media has depicted the U.S. measures as bullying behavior, while also hinting at potential countermeasures that could include restrictions on American service businesses operating in China. In a similar vein, the U.S. could further tighten restrictions on Chinese access to advanced technologies, exacerbating the existing rift. Looking ahead, the trajectory of U.S.-China trade relations appears uncertain. While both sides may be hoping for a resolution that allows for a return to normalcy, the current atmosphere of distrust and hostility suggests that a long-term decoupling may be inevitable. As Evan Medeiros, a professor of Asian studies at Georgetown University, aptly puts it, they will resist it with the belief that China can withstand more pain than they can. As these economic giants navigate this treacherous landscape, the world watches closely, aware that the implications of their choices will echo far beyond their borders. The unfolding saga of the U.S.-China trade war underscores not only the fragility of global trade but also the intricate web of interdependence that binds the world's economies together. In the absence of a diplomatic breakthrough, the coming months may very well test the resilience of economic ties that have held for decades. As global tensions continue to rise, the dynamics of military power in the Asia-Pacific region are shifting dramatically. Recent developments have spotlighted the escalating military capabilities of China, prompting concerns from U.S. officials and allies about the implications for regional security. Notably, Pete Hegseth, a prominent voice in American conservative circles, has warned against the implications of China's military expansion, particularly as it relates to the ongoing strategic rivalry between the U.S. and Beijing. In a recent commentary, Hegseth articulated the urgency of recognizing China's growing military footprint, suggesting that the West must bolster its defense strategies in response. "We are witnessing a significant shift in the balance of power," he stated, emphasizing the need for a united front among Western allies. His remarks come as China continues to unveil advanced military technologies, including the J-36 stealth fighter and the Type 076 amphibious assault ship, which have raised eyebrows not just in the U.S. but across the Asia-Pacific. Meanwhile, India finds itself in a precarious position as China accelerates its military modernization. India grapples with its own defense shortcomings, particularly in the realm of aircraft development and indigenous military capabilities. The recent purchase by Pakistan of a variant of the Chinese J-31 stealth fighter could further tilt the regional balance of air power, compelling India to reassess its military strategy. The Indian Air Force currently faces significant operational challenges, with only 31 out of a sanctioned 42 fighter squadrons deemed operational, a situation exacerbated by delays in aircraft acquisitions and pilot shortages. This backdrop of growing military capabilities and shifting alliances underscores India's urgent need to recalibrate its strategic approach. The nation has long touted its ambition to achieve self-reliance through initiatives like Make in India, yet progress has been hampered by dependency on foreign imports for critical defense technologies. Air Chief Marshal Amarpreet Singh voiced concerns about this reliance, stating, "We should reach a stage where technology comes out of India and others are chasing it." The political discourse surrounding defense in India has long been characterized by a narrative of strength against China, often obscuring the reality of its technological limitations. While the government has pushed for a robust defense posture, the intricacies of bureaucratic inefficiencies and procurement challenges have stymied progress. The gap between aspirations and execution has never been more apparent, particularly as India confronts the stark reality of its military readiness in the face of a rapidly advancing Chinese military. As regional tensions escalate, India's defense establishment is faced with a decisive moment. The juxtaposition of political rhetoric and strategic reality poses significant questions. Can India maintain its ambitions of military parity with China while simultaneously addressing its domestic defense production challenges? Or will it need to adopt a more pragmatic approach, balancing domestic production with necessary foreign acquisitions to ensure its national security? The recent warming of diplomatic relations between India and China, highlighted by Prime Minister Modi's calls for dialogue, suggests a potential shift in strategy. However, this must not lead to complacency. Rather, it should serve as a catalyst for India to bolster its military capabilities and address its procurement inefficiencies. The pursuit of military modernization must be matched by tangible actions rather than symbolic gestures, and a clear-eyed assessment of the defense landscape is essential. The future trajectory of India's defense strategy will hinge on its ability to break free from entrenched narratives that pit self-reliance against necessary partnerships. As India seeks to navigate the complexities of regional security dynamics, it must embrace a multifaceted approach that prioritizes immediate operational needs while fostering long-term indigenous capabilities. The stakes are high. Failure to act decisively could leave India strategically sidelined in an evolving global order dominated by military prowess and technological advancements. In conclusion, as tensions mount and military capabilities evolve, the imperative for India is clear: it must chart a course that acknowledges both its limitations and its aspirations. The time for merely reacting to China's advancements has passed. India must commit to a strategic vision that aligns its defense priorities with the realities of the 21st century security landscape. Without bold action, the aspirations for military self-reliance may remain unfulfilled, leaving India vulnerable in an increasingly competitive arena. In a stark reminder of the complexities entwined in global trade and illicit activities. The U.S. Treasury Department has recently spotlighted China and Mexico as pivotal players in a sophisticated financial network fueling the ongoing fentanyl crisis. Released on April 9, 2025, the report underscores the intricate web of financial transactions that serve to bolster the illegal opioid trade, utilizing various channels from social media marketing to money laundering, and implicating entities in Hong Kong as key facilitators. The findings paint a troubling picture of a resilient system that relies on wire transfers, online pharmacies, and even casinos contributing to the widespread distribution of fentanyl, a potent synthetic opioid responsible for numerous overdoses and deaths across the United States. Hong Kong-based companies were often reported in conjunction with mainland-based subjects conducting similar financial activity or operating within the same financial networks, the report states, highlighting the cross-border nature of this illicit trade. This revelation is particularly significant as it arrives at a critical juncture in U.S.-China relations, coinciding with heightened trade tensions and tariffs. The report comes just months into the second term of Donald Trump's presidency, which has already seen a marked increase in tariffs on Chinese imports, now reaching as high as 125%. In retaliation, China has responded with its own tariffs, raising tensions and further destabilizing global equity markets. These developments suggest that the U.S. may leverage the findings to bolster its stance in the ongoing trade war, utilizing the fentanyl crisis as a justification for stricter economic measures against both China and Mexico. Mark Magner, reporting from New York, notes that while the data presented in the Treasury report is not entirely groundbreaking, it serves as a critical piece of evidence in the broader narrative surrounding U.S. efforts to combat the opioid epidemic. The administration's focus on fentanyl trafficking aligns with its broader strategy of using trade policies as a tool to exert pressure on nations perceived as complicit in the crisis. As the U.S. grapples with these challenges, the implications extend beyond economics and public health. The findings may prompt calls for more stringent regulatory measures and international cooperation to dismantle these illicit networks. Furthermore, the diplomatic fallout from such revelations could complicate future negotiations on a variety of fronts, potentially hindering progress on other critical issues between the U.S. and these nations. Looking ahead, the intersection of trade diplomacy and public health will likely remain a focal point as the U.S. navigates its relationships with China and Mexico. The ongoing opioid crisis, fueled by the very networks identified in the Treasury report, will continue to serve as a contentious backdrop against which geopolitical strategies will unfold. As various stakeholders assess their positions, the need for a cohesive and coordinated approach to address both the opioid epidemic and the complexities of international trade is becoming increasingly urgent.